While we are students, we are primarily draining money with the expectation that right after, suddenly, we will be financially independent. The life we lead, often comfortably at our parents' dime, we find is very hard to sustain when we enter the real world, carrying all our degrees and debts. Business school taught me a lot, but what I did not learn, and I can bet you did not either, is what should I do when that first salary, no matter how small, starts to roll in? What is that first step to financial freedom? Don't worry, this is not yet another sermon on what you should be doing. Frankly, I cannot really tell you that because I myself am trying to figure it out. But what I can do is share with you the small financial wins that I had this year, along with the reasons why, the mistakes I made, and given those the goals that I have for this year. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, follow along. My first mini success, so to speak, last year was I was able to save about $2,000 a month. Now, I recognize it's good, but not great. I mean, there are people out there saving like 70% of their income, but I like to buy stuff. I appreciate some concepts in minimalism, but I like things. So I've been essentially trying to balance how can I save and be within my means and at the same time not hate my life. So given that, I consider it a mini success for myself. The way I was able to do it, especially considering I live in downtown Toronto, which is arguably the most expensive place to be in Canada, a major expense of being in downtown Toronto is the rent. So I was able to really curtail that. So on average, throughout the year, I only paid about $1,000. And it might seem like a lot if you're somewhere outside, but for downtown Toronto, that is really reasonable. That really contributed to my savings. The second financial win would be most of the savings I had were in cash. I had read in articles and reports that said when markets go down, person with the cash is king. Not having much investing knowledge at the time, I began saving up for the day markets do go down, and go down they did. This allowed me to get some pretty good bargains for good companies. Now, I am just starting out, so my portfolio is small, but even so, I've seen a return of about 10 to 12%. Not bad considering the savings rates in the market right now are rock bottom. Now, my return is not a crazy 200%, which I know you might have seen some people having, but given that I'm relatively new at this and the market was being super unpredictable, I chose to go with mostly dividend stocks of stable companies, which for me meant lesser but hopefully more stable returns. Okay, now moving on to the mistakes I made. The first one is probably that I bought coffee, I think on average 6 times a week, which is a lot. Coffee gives me pleasure, and also I think during the pandemic time when everything was under lockdown, that one trip that I would make daily to my cafe and see my barista and talk to him about his life, I think I considered that as social contact. So given that it was somehow contributing to my mental well-being, I think it is somewhat justified. But even so, I'm not sure if 6 days a week is justified. It was a little excessive. Number 2 is that I chose to invest in low price stocks. My thought process was that if I invest in low price stocks of still good companies, then I can invest more, like I can buy more stocks. The very stupid mistake I made was I wasn't thinking in terms of the value. I was thinking in terms of the price, and price and value are very different things. I had been following 2 particular stocks. Amazon, at the time it was $1,800, and Shopify, which at the time was hovering around like $500, $600 range. Looking back, that's super cheap. But at that time, a price tag of $1,800, I mean, come on, that's like 2 months of rent. I had Amazon boxes coming to my place every single day. And then Shopify is also something that I had seen the drop shipping trend just grow excessively. So I knew that that was a growing platform, but I just could not get myself to cough up that amount of money for individual stocks. I guess that's why experience is important. I've experienced it, so I know it's not the price, it's the value. That's something that I want to keep more in mind going forward. The third mistake I made that is also investing related is that I invested in stocks through my personal account rather than my tax-free account. And it might seem obvious that, oh, of course you should go with the tax-free account, but I had a very good sound logic for why I did this. So I did this because the market was so uncertain. I knew that if I invested in my personal account, I would have to pay taxes, but then if the values go down or the market does not recover, then I can also claim losses. Now, if on the other hand, I invested in the tax-free account, the benefit would be that there's no taxes once you earn income or the value goes up. But if I made losses, then I could not write those off against my taxes. So it came down to the risk tolerance level. I was just more risk averse and not very confident in the picks that I was making. So I decided that, okay, fine, if I have to pay taxes on my earnings, I'd rather do that than not be able to protect myself against the losses in case that happens. Now, the reason that was flawed was because I made sure to go into the market when the market was at its down. And I'm not trying to time the market. I want to look at investing more from a longer term standpoint. So I know that if I'm investing, I'm getting in, especially at low point, and I know that a one-time event has shook up the market, then I know that the value is going to go up at least to the normal level. So it would have been better if I invested through my tax-free account, especially given that I was investing in dividend stocks, which are anyway relatively safer than growth stocks. Okay, last but not the least, in fact, I think probably the most important mistake that I made, I did not track my expenses. And I know that I did okay on the saving front, even without tracking my expenses, but a big part of that was because I was able to secure that low rent. And now I've moved into a new place, so I don't have that leverage this year. I wish I had tracked my own financial behavior. So going into this year, I would know exactly how and where I can improve. This brings me to my financial goals for this year. The first one is that I want to track my income, expenses, and investments. And I've set myself up with this tracker, which I'm going to be using on a daily basis and then reviewing on sort of a monthly basis. It's still new. I've only used it for a couple of days, so I'm going to do a review once I've actually used it for a while. In terms of savings and investments, I want to increase my savings by 20,000 and investments by 10,000. Those are not stretch goals by any means. They're very similar to my numbers for last year. But given that I'm actually beginning to adult, living by myself in a one-bedroom apartment for the first time in my life, that makes this goal a bit of a stretch goal, but it's definitely doable still. The third one is I want to start making coffee at home. Now, that does not mean I'm not going to be going to cafes. I definitely will, but 6 times a week is not something I can afford, or even if I can, it's not very smart. I got a new coffee machine for my birthday. So yes, it is an upfront cost, but I did the math, and if I consume coffee at the rate that I have been consuming, in about 3 months, I'm going to break even on the cost. So I think it's okay. Another benefit of the coffee machine is that I can finally get into something that I've been thinking about getting for a long time, which is making coffee, like pulling the perfect espresso and doing latte art. That's something that I really feel like I missed out on during my college experience. I wanted to be a barista at least at some point, but I did not get the opportunity to do that. So I can finally kind of hone my craft in that department, because what else am I going to do during this lockdown? At some point, I'll document that on this channel as well. And lastly, I don't want to be one of the people who just focuses on saving, because yes, saving is immensely powerful and that's where we all have to start. My goal is to find ways to increase my income by 20% by the end of the year. Now, this can mean either getting promoted at work, or negotiating a higher salary, or finding a new job, or maybe doing something on the side, freelancing, providing advising services to students wanting to study abroad. It could manifest in a lot of ways, and that's something that's still in the works, but I'll keep sharing as it develops further. So there you have it. Those were my financial wins, mistakes, and goals for the coming year. If you made it so far, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time, and I will see you in the next one.